I am Danielle, and the day my 7-year-old son whispered, "I'm not hungry anymore," was the day something inside me broke forever. They didn't beat me. They didn't scream, but my parents starved my child, and somehow that was so much worse. It didn't start with a tragedy. It started with what looked like kindness. Our apartment had been declared unsafe after faulty wiring caused a near fire. Insurance would cover a hotel. Eventually, we were stuck between homes. That's when my mother called. "Bring Caleb here," she said. "We've got space," and I believed her. For the first time in years, I let them in again. I told myself they were trying. I packed Caleb's allergy list, labeled every item in the grocery bag, kissed his cheek, and told him I'd be back in 3 days. 3 days. It should have been safe, but by day 3 Caleb's voice on the phone sounded wrong. Smaller. Slower. "What did you eat today?" I asked, already feeling the dread bloom. He hesitated. "Some crackers." I froze. "Just crackers. Papa said lunch is for family," he said. "And I'm just visiting." I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I drove through the night, headlights slicing through rain, fury burning hotter than any fire. What I found the next morning made my blood run cold. My parents were at the breakfast table. Sausage, pancakes, eggs. Caleb sat silently at the corner, pale with an empty plate. My voice trembled. "Where's his food?" My mom didn't even blink. "You already ate." "No, I didn't," Caleb whispered. And my dad, he snorted. "He had some crackers yesterday. He's not starving." They said it like it was a joke. But it wasn't. It was a line in the sand, and they had just crossed it. I couldn't sleep that night. Not just because I missed Caleb, or because he was in a house that never once felt like home to me. It was something deeper. A gnawing feeling in my gut that wouldn't settle. That kind of tight, suffocating sensation you get before a storm. The air changes, and even the silence hums wrong. I kept staring at my phone. I told myself not to be paranoid. Told myself that they'd never hurt him. Not really. But then again, I'd told myself that for years about what they did to me. And wasn't that the first lie I ever swallowed whole? The call came the next morning. Caleb's voice was small. Too small. "Hi, Mommy," he said. I sat up immediately. "Hey, baby, you okay?" "Yeah," he said, but it wasn't real. Even at 7, my boy knew how to lie for adults who didn't deserve protection. "What did you eat today?" "Sweetheart," I asked, trying to sound casual. He hesitated. "Some crackers," he said. "Crackers." He paused again. "Papa said lunch is only for family. And I'm just visiting." That sentence cracked something in me. Not just my heart. Not just my rage. But something buried so deep inside I didn't even know it had a name. Maybe it was called enough. I don't remember getting in the car. I don't remember half the drive. I just remember the sound of my own breath. Sharp, heavy, and trembling, as I tried to keep my hands steady on the wheel. By the time I reached their house, my hands weren't steady anymore. They were shaking so badly I had to sit in the car for a full minute before I could even open the door. The smell hit me first. Sausage, pancakes, coffee. Like a mockery of every childhood memory I ever tried to bury. I pushed the door open without knocking. My mom didn't look up from her magazine. My dad was slicing into a thick pancake stack like he was hosting Sunday brunch for saints. Caleb sat at the far end of the table. His plate was empty. He looked pale, like the light inside him had dimmed just a bit. His shoulders were hunched, his little hands folded in his lap. I'd never seen him sit like that, not even in the doctor's office. "Where's his food?" I asked, my voice cracking. My mom didn't blink. "He already ate." "No, I didn't," Caleb whispered. Eyes still down, my father snorted. "He had crackers yesterday. He's fine. Not starving." I looked at my son, then at the plate, then at the 2 people who raised me, taught me that love was always conditional, and now had the audacity to treat my child like a guest in a home filled with portraits of Melissa's kids. "Why would you say he's not family?" I asked. My mom rolled her eyes. "Because he's not. He's your kid, not ours. We didn't sign up for this." He's 7, I said. 7 years old. He didn't ask to be here. I did. And you said? We said we'd help until you got back on your feet. My dad interrupted. Doesn't mean we're raising him. I didn't ask you to raise him. I snapped. I asked you to feed him. That was when I saw it. Caleb's face twitched. Just slightly. Just enough to make me realize he'd been trying not to cry for who knows how long. And he was succeeding, too, because that's what I taught him, how to survive people like them. But he shouldn't have to. I packed a week's worth of groceries, I said quietly. Where is it? My mom glanced over. Probably gone. He's a picky eater. Wouldn't touch the ham salad. He's allergic to eggs, I said. You know that? She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. He didn't eat it. That's when I stopped talking. I walked to Caleb, picked him up, all bones and silence, and said, We're leaving. My mom scoffed. You're seriously making a scene over some snacks. I didn't turn around. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out the door and never stepped foot in that house again. We stopped at a diner on the way home. It was one of those small, chrome-plated places where the coffee's always burnt and the waitresses call you honey. Even if you're falling apart, I ordered Caleb pancakes with strawberries and extra syrup. His favorite. He took 2 bites and stopped. My stomach hurts, he whispered. I nodded, pretending I didn't feel my chest split open. You don't have to eat it, I said gently. It's just there if you want it. He looked at the plate for a long time, like it was something dangerous. Then he pushed it away and rested his cheek against the table, eyes heavy, but not sleepy. Just dull. Like something inside him had gone into hiding. That scared me more than anything. At home, he wouldn't talk about it. Every time I asked what happened at their house, he shook his head. Once when I said, Baby, it's okay to tell me, he whispered, They said if I complained, you'd get mad at me. I froze. Not because I believed it, but because he did. My 7-year-old son believed that telling me the truth might make me angry at him. Not them. That's how deep the manipulation ran. That's how far their poison went. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and a pen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote. I made a list, not of revenge, not yet, but of what they loved. Melissa's attention, their reputation in the neighborhood, their antique china collection, their place at church, their perfect family. Illusion, my silence, that last one hit hardest. My silence. That was their oxygen. The unspoken pact that I wouldn't tell, that I'd always keep it inside, that I'd continue to play the role they wrote for me, the quiet, unstable, over-emotional daughter who could never be trusted. But that was about to change. Because if they could starve my son for 2 days and still look in the mirror, then it was time for the mirror to crack, not with rage, not with lies, just the truth, spoken, repeated, whispered in the ears of every person they wanted to impress. And I would start with the ones closest to them. I started with my Aunt Leah. She was the kind of woman who always smelled like gardenias and carried mints in her purse for everyone's kids, except mine. Not because she disliked Caleb. No. She just didn't know him. No one really did. Because I'd kept him away. From the moment he was born, I shielded him like a fragile flame in a wind tunnel. I told myself I was protecting him from the cold, but in truth, I was protecting myself from facing the truth, that my family didn't see him as one of us. When I called Aunt Leah, my voice was calm, no accusations, no bitterness, just the truth. They didn't feed Caleb for 2 days, I said. Silence. Wait, what? They gave him crackers, called him a visitor, said lunch was for family. He's 7. She didn't ask if it was true. She didn't defend them. She said, That's evil. That's when I knew the ice was beginning to crack. She asked, Why didn't you tell me sooner? I answered honestly, because I was taught not to talk. Aunt Lee wasn't the only one. I told my cousin Mark, who'd always admired my dad. I told the lady from church who used to send us birthday cards. I even told Melissa, My perfect sister with the perfect life. She didn't believe me at first, until I sent her the audio. Caleb's tiny voice, flat and tired, saying, "Papa said lunch is for family, and I'm just visiting." And my mom's voice, dismissive and dry, "You're seriously making a scene over snacks?" Melissa went silent for a full minute. Then she texted, "I won't bring the twins over next weekend. I'm so sorry, Riley. I had no idea." And just like that, it began. The uninviting. The slow unraveling. The cracks in the image they worshipped more than anything, reputation. They didn't know yet. But I had started a quiet storm. And the winds were coming for their house of mirrors. I didn't plan a takedown. There were no spreadsheets, no timelines, no calculated revenge. Just conversations. Whispers like wind slipping under a locked door, one person told another. Then another. By the end of the week, the invitations stopped. The weekly brunch my parents hosted. Empty chairs. The neighbor who used to wave at them while watering her begonias. Eyes averted. Even Melissa canceled her kid's next visit. Texting me, "I can't pretend like nothing happened." Then came the first phone call. It was my mom. Her voice cracked before the second sentence. "Why are people ignoring us?" I didn't answer. She tried again, softer. "We're your parents. Funny. They only remember they're my parents when they need me to play along." A day later, my dad left a voicemail. "You're ruining our name over what? Some crackers." That's what Caleb's worth to them. 7 years old. Quiet, gentle. Told he wasn't family. Fed like a stray dog under their roof. And they call that just crackers. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The silence, my silence, was louder than all the years of begging for scraps of love. And still they didn't know what was coming next. Because the cracks weren't just spreading. They were deepening, reaching back into old memories, secrets they'd buried under fine china and social smiles. And I was done keeping them buried. They always said image is everything. And if image is everything, then sunlight is the enemy. I waited until their annual charity barbecue, a fundraiser for the local fire department, neighborhood kids running with balloons, smiling politicians shaking hands, my dad grilling like he owned the entire town. This was their stage. And they had no idea the curtains were about to be pulled back. I didn't attend, but I RSVP'd, with a name they hadn't heard in years, Mrs. Eileen Carlton, my 4th grade teacher. Gray hair in a bun, floral dresses, and a memory sharp enough to cut steel. She once told me, "You're a kind soul, Riley, even if your parents seem more interested in looking good than being good." I called her a week before the event. Told her everything, not with anger, not with tears. Just the truth. They didn't feed Caleb for 2 days. They told him he wasn't family. Her silence burned more than rage. Then she said, "I'll be there." The barbecue began like always. Smiles. Photo ops, laughter. And then Eileen arrived, wearing a plain white shirt that read, "Family feeds even when it's hard." She didn't whisper, didn't hide. She walked straight up to my mom and said, "So sorry I didn't bring my grandson. I assumed children weren't welcome unless they're blood related. Or does that not count in this house?" Silence. Actual silence. The kind that screams. Neighbors turned. Conversations halted. Plastic forks paused mid-air. My mother flushed so red I thought she might collapse. My dad gave a nervous laugh. "You know Eileen. Such a firecracker." But it didn't matter. Because Eileen wasn't alone. I had already told the truth to people who mattered more to them than I ever did. And truth, when whispered enough, becomes a roar. They tried to patch it up, tried to laugh it off, tried to steer the conversation toward weather, donations, and meaningless small talk. But the damage was already done, because the people they cared about, the ones they craved praise from, had looked into their eyes and seen the truth blink back. That night, I didn't call them, but they called me. 6 times I let it ring. The voicemails came next. "Why are you turning people against us? We're your parents. You're punishing us over a misunderstanding. This isn't healthy, Riley." If you're going to ruin our name, at least let us explain our side. Their side. You don't starve a child, a 7-year-old, and expect to have a side. Still, they tried. Tried to paint me hysterical, sensitive, irrational. The old labels. The ancient weapons. But they didn't work anymore. Because I'd learned the most dangerous person is the one who no longer needs to be believed. I could have stopped there. I could have left it with Eileen's shirt and the barbecue silence. But something in me had changed. Not just the anger, the clarity. I remembered being 15, missing my best friend's birthday party because Mom needed me to polish her antique teacups. Image is everything, she'd said. If we don't look put together, we're nothing. So I decided to help them. I helped them destroy that image, gently, truthfully, without yelling. I spoke to the pastor, to the woman from their book club, to the neighbor who always brought them Christmas cookies. I didn't twist the story, didn't dress it up. I just said, they didn't feed my son for 2 days. They told him he wasn't family. That was enough, because people don't need a spectacle. They just need the truth, said softly, repeated enough. Soon, invitations stopped. Phone calls vanished. My parents were surrounded by mirrors that finally reflected who they were. And they couldn't bear to look. They weren't starving for food. They were starving for something else: control, admiration, illusions, and I had stripped it all away. But they didn't know yet. The worst was still coming: the house. If my parents were ever capable of love, it was for that house. A pristine colonial-style structure passed down from my grandfather, my father's badge of honor, my mother's proof that she had done something right in life. They worshipped it like a cathedral. The lawn was always manicured, the roses cut into geometric perfection, the living room spotless, staged like a magazine spread. They had always said, this house will stay in the family forever. But now, the photos of Caleb had been quietly removed from the mantel. The birthday streamers for my son had never existed. The refrigerator had no crayon drawings, no finger paint chaos, no memory of the boy they refused to feed. It was no longer a home. It was a museum of delusion, a shell. So I gave them a parting gift. I sent a package. Inside, a thick envelope of family photos, childhood pictures, with them cropped out. Caleb's first day of school, me and him at the zoo, all printed on thick, glossy paper. On top, a handwritten letter. This is your family now. In pictures only. Look at them as long as you want. Because that's the closest you'll ever get again. You fed your pride more than you fed my child. You called him a visitor. Now you're strangers. I never got a reply. But a week later, Melissa called. Her voice was shaky. I stopped by. The house is dark. Curtains drawn. Porch light flickering. She paused. They barely speak. Dad just wanders around in slippers. Mom keeps calling people, but no one wants to come over. I said nothing at first. Then, good. That means they're finally living like Caleb did. For those 2 days, Melissa tried to defend them. They were raised differently, you know that. So was I replied. But I don't starve kids and call it discipline. She never brought it up again. Time passed. Caleb started smiling more, laughing, asking silly questions again. Do birds get hungry when it rains? Do grandmas always forget snacks? And then, one day, Mom, can we drive by their house? I looked at him. Why? I just want to see it. So we went. Sat across the street, engine off. The lawn was overgrown. The porch creaked in the wind. A curtain moved, but no one came out. Does anyone live there? Caleb asked. Not really, I said. We sat in silence. Then he leaned his head against my shoulder. I'm not hungry anymore, he whispered. I kissed his forehead. I know, baby. Neither am I. That night, after we drove past the house that once pretended to hold love, I couldn't sleep. Not because of rage, not because of grief, but because of clarity. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what freedom felt like. Not the kind you celebrate with champagne. The kind that sits with you in the quiet, wraps itself around your bones, and says, you finally did it. You broke the cycle. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a crumpled grocery list. It used to be scribbled with survival math: buy bread, skip lunch, make it stretch till payday. But now it had fruit snacks and chocolate milk. Small luxuries that once felt like gold. I added something new to the bottom: safety, stability, self-respect. Because those two were essentials. I opened a blank notebook, something I hadn't done since college, and I wrote what I've learned, for Caleb, for me, for anyone still stuck in the cycle. Silence protects abusers, they thrive in it. They twist it into permission, break it. Love without respect is just control in disguise. If someone loves the idea of you but hates your boundaries, they don't love you. Family isn't blood. It's who feeds you when you're hungry, literally and emotionally. The ones who see your child and don't measure him against DNA. The ones who make him laugh again. You are not dramatic. You are not too sensitive. You are responding to cruelty that others normalized. Reputation means nothing when it starves the truth and let it burn. From the ashes, build something real. People often ask, was it worth it? Burning that bridge. And I say, if the bridge leads back to people who called my son a waste of food, then it was never a bridge. It was a leash. And I finally cut it. To anyone reading this who's still afraid to speak, I see you. I know how heavy silence can feel. I know how loyalty can rot when it's only expected from one side. But here's what I want you to know. Deeply, fully, you're allowed to leave people behind. Even if they changed your diapers, even if they paid for prom, even if everyone else calls them saints. You're allowed to protect your child from the same wounds you carry. You are allowed to demand better, even when they call you ungrateful. Especially then. Somewhere tonight, another child is being told they're a visitor in their own family. And somewhere else, a parent like me is holding their tongue, too afraid of being called dramatic or divisive or bitter. But I'm here to say, tell the truth anyway, say it plainly, let them sit with it. And if they starve you of love, don't starve yourself trying to earn it back. If this story touched something inside you, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, or if someone made your child feel invisible, share your story. Right here, right now, in the comments below, because silence fed them for far too long. It's time we fed the truth instead. Healing doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It comes in whispers, in quiet mornings where nothing hurts, in school pickup lines where Caleb runs to me, arms wide open, in grocery aisles where I no longer hesitate to buy his favorite juice, because I know he's worth every cent. It's easy to talk about revenge, harder to talk about recovery, but this part matters most. 3 weeks after we drove past my parents' darkened house, Caleb had a nightmare. He woke up crying, soaked in sweat. I rushed into his room and found him curled into himself, whispering, "I was invisible again, Mom." They didn't see me. I held him until his breathing slowed. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I made a plan, not for payback, but for protection. I started small. A whiteboard on the fridge with Caleb's meals this week, written in green marker. Not because I'd forget, but because he needed to see it, needed to know he would never go hungry again. Not in body, not in spirit. Then came the safety jar. I let Caleb write notes of things that made him feel safe. Mom's hugs, hot pancakes, lights left on just a little at bedtime, when people don't yell. We read one every morning, and slowly, the bad dreams faded. I found a therapist, for both of us. The first few sessions were rocky. Caleb didn't want to talk. I didn't want to cry. But then the therapist, soft-spoken and warm, said something that stuck with me. Your son doesn't just need protection. He needs to see you safe, too. So I started working on myself, not just to be a good mother, but to finally become someone I could feel proud of. I changed the locks, both literal and emotional. No more answering unknown numbers. No more explaining myself to people who didn't want to understand. No more pretending my parents would one day wake up kind. Forgiveness doesn't require access. People asked, will you ever let them see Caleb again? And I say, would you let someone who poisoned your child have a second chance with their food? Their poison wasn't arsenic, it was neglect, shame, favoritism. And Caleb would never taste that again. One afternoon, as we folded laundry, Caleb asked, "Mom, why did they say I wasn't family?" I froze. Then, gently, because sometimes people only love the idea of family, not the responsibility of it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "I'm glad I have real family now." "Me too, baby. Me too." We built new traditions: waffle Wednesdays, storytime Saturdays with flashlights and pillow forts, $1 movie nights on the couch with popcorn, even if we'd already had dinner. Not because we needed distraction, but because we deserved joy. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living, laughing. One morning, as I walked Caleb to school, he squeezed my hand and said, "You're the best mom, because you believe me even when it's hard." And just like that, the years of doubt, of silence, of being told I was too sensitive, collapsed behind me like ash. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was a story of rebirth. And the best part, we hadn't even reached the climax yet, because something unexpected was about to knock on our door. 3 months had passed. The leaves were turning. The pain had softened into memory. We were finally okay. Then, it came. A pale yellow envelope in the mailbox, addressed in my mother's handwriting. No return address, just my name, spelled right this time. I stood frozen on the porch. Caleb was inside, humming to himself, drawing something with stars and dinosaurs. I didn't want to break that peace. Didn't want the past clawing its way back through our front door. But I opened the letter. Not because I missed them. Not because I hoped. I opened it because I was no longer afraid. Inside, 3 pages. Handwritten, shaky. No greeting, no dear. Just her voice. "You were always difficult." But maybe I was harder. I didn't feed Caleb because I didn't know how to love what I didn't recognize. That's not an excuse. But it's the only truth I have left. Your father barely speaks. Melissa avoids us. The house feels like a waiting room. I've never apologized to anyone in writing. But here's my attempt. At the bottom, scribbled like a final breath. "If you ever want to talk, I'd like to try. No demands, no defenses, just truth." I read it twice, then again. And I didn't know what I felt. Not anger, not sadness, something else, maybe detachment. People assume forgiveness feels like a clean bandage. But sometimes it's more like an old scar. You can touch it. You can acknowledge it. But it doesn't need reopening. I placed the letter on the counter, left it there for a week, unread by Caleb, unnoticed by anyone else. But one Sunday morning, there was a knock. Not the mailman, not a neighbor. Melissa. She stood on the porch, holding a small box and a thermos. Same tired eyes, same guilt tucked into her frown. "I'm not here for them," she said. "I'm here for him. For Caleb." I didn't know whether to slam the door or hug her, so I did neither. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I let them do to you what I swore I'd never let them do to your son. And I was wrong." She handed me the box. Inside, photos of Caleb. At birthday parties he hadn't been invited to. Of Melissa's kids playing in the backyard. And at the bottom, an old picture of us. Me and her, arms around each other. Before life got complicated. "Can I try?" she asked. Not to fix everything, just to be better. I let her in. Not out of trust, not yet. But because Caleb deserved to see what real accountability looked like. He came out from his room cautious. Melissa knelt down, her voice trembling. "I didn't protect you. But I see you now, and I'm sorry." Caleb nodded, eyes wide. He didn't say anything. But later that night, he drew her a picture of a tree with 2 nests. One labeled, home, the other, trying. That night, I opened the letter one last time. I didn't write back, but I picked up my phone and saved their number under a new contact. Boundary. Not mom. Not dad. Just a reminder. That love doesn't mean returning to harm. It means choosing safety, even when blood begs otherwise. Not every wound needs to be stitched shut with a reunion. Some wounds need space. To scar. To remind you of where you've been. and why you'll never go back. I used to think forgiveness meant opening the door again. That if they cried enough, apologized just right, or looked sorry in the right lighting, I had to give them another chance. But now I know forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is release. For yourself. I didn't want Caleb to grow up thinking love meant silence. That family was something to endure, not something that holds you when you're broken. And most of all, I didn't need revenge wrapped in fireworks. I needed boundaries. I needed peace. Caleb is older now. He doesn't ask about them anymore. Doesn't wonder why they don't call. He's learned, somehow, that their silence isn't a loss. It's a gift. One day he drew a picture of our house and titled it, Trying. I framed it. That's when I knew we won. Not by destroying them, but by living better, deeper, and no longer letting them define us. No child should have to earn food. Real love is unconditional. Family isn't blood. It's the people who choose you every single day. Forgiveness sometimes. Forgiveness is walking away without ever turning back. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest, strongest answer there is. Have you ever been hurt by the people who were supposed to protect you? Have you ever had to choose your own healing over someone else's comfort? Share your story in the comments. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that we all deserve a family. Even if we have to build it ourselves. And maybe, just maybe when we rewrite our own stories, the ending doesn't hurt. It sets us free. Thanks for watching Telling Story with me. If this story resonated with you, hit like, share it, and tell us, when did you finally choose peace over pretending? Because sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes when you choose yourself.